Hey everyone, and welcome back or welcome to the Electric Climate. If you are new here, I'm Sequoia, and in this video I wanted to just talk a little bit about what the use is for having multiple OSs in one setup. In my setup here I have three. I've got Windows, Mac, and Linux. So this video might interest you if you're thinking about that kind of setup for yourself, or if you just like computer talk. Just for a little bit of context from my side, I've been a Mac user pretty much exclusively for probably over a decade now, and I definitely suffer from lock-in a little bit because of all of this time, just having all of my devices be compatible in that way. I have an iPhone, a MacBook, AirPods, an Apple Watch, and I have an iPad that I don't use too frequently, but everything just syncs nicely. If you are an Apple user, you know this. I use AirDrop probably every day, and it's nice to have like your AirPods just sync up with all of your devices no matter what you open. I use the reminders and notes app, so it's definitely a nice thing to have all of this synced across one OS. However, there are other reasons why you might want multiple operating systems in your setup. So right now my setup consists of 2 computers and 3 operating systems. I have a 15-inch M2 Macbook Air with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and then over here I have a custom-built dual-boot, dual-drive PC, and this has a Ryzen 7 7700X CPU and a Radeon RX 7600 GPU with 32 gigabytes of RAM. In that computer, I have Windows installed in a 2 terabyte drive in the main SSD slot, and I have Kali Linux installed on a 512 gigabyte drive in the secondary slot. Unless you're a pretty big computer hobbyist, it might seem kind of strange to bother with having a 3 OS setup, but there's definitely a method to the madness, and it's actually not very much more expensive to jump from a 2 to a 3 operating system setup, especially if you have a custom PC. I only spent $30 more on top of my build to add in that second drive, and you don't actually need to do that technically because you can partition your one hard drive into a dual boot system. So you can basically just keep your original build, partition your drive, and install Linux as long as you have enough space to spare. The main reason that I built my Windows PC was for gaming, and 6-ish months later, this is still what I almost exclusively use it for due to the aforementioned lock-in with my Mac laptop. I do use it as a secondary computer when I don't have my laptop at my setup for like browsing the internet or watching YouTube videos, but mostly this PC is just for gaming. I'm not going to talk too much about the performance of this PC for gaming, even though that's what it's for, because I do have a video specifically on my setup build process and the parts that I chose, so I will link that here. But suffice it to say, I'm really happy with the parts that I chose. My performance is good with all the games that I want to play. My temps don't run too hot, and I really like the look of the PC. The Vantex case that I chose, I'm still so happy with. I think it looks so good, especially with everything else that I have in my setup. On the Linux side of this PC, I chose Kali Linux as my distro, but I actually wouldn't recommend this to probably most people who would end up watching this video, because there are better general purpose distros like Ubuntu or Mint that you can get. Kali specifically comes with ethical hacking and pen testing tools, so this would be a bad choice for anybody who's not looking to use it for that specific purpose. If you're curious why I chose Kali, let me know in the comments. It's probably a topic for another video, so I won't talk too much about it in this video, but essentially I chose to add Linux to my setup because I wanted to gain familiarity with the OS and I wanted to learn the specific tools that come installed on Kali. My MacBook is a couple years old, but this is still my main everyday computer. I use it for basically everything, including running DaVinci Resolve to edit the videos for this channel. And it's just a super reliable computer. Even the MacBook Air line nowadays comes with a lot of power, especially if you upgrade the RAM, which I definitely recommend. I did want to talk about some of the challenges that I've had with this setup and that I expect that anybody that has a multi-OS setup might face. So just something to consider. Any setup is going to have downsides, and this one certainly does too. So just to be aware of, especially if you're considering incorporating another computer or operating system into your setup. On a practical note, it's definitely more work to have multiple operating systems in terms of logging into your accounts and having your documents and files accessible. So that's a drawback. I would say in general, I really recommend that everybody use a password manager so that you can use longer, so more complex and unique passwords. But this also solves part of that problem of switching between your different computers or operating systems. Is if you have a password manager, it just makes it easier to log into all your accounts across your devices. On the flip side of how fun it is to have multiple OSs to play around with, it's definitely something that you need to spend a good amount of time and thoughtful time setting up, particularly in the wiring of your setup so that it's easy for you to switch between your systems. For example, you definitely want to be able to keep using all of your same peripherals when you are moving from one computer to the other. You don't want to have to unplug your keyboard and plug it into your other device. So I would recommend a KVM switch. Basically, if you don't know what that is, you plug all your peripherals, so your monitors, your keyboard, your mouse, microphone, into the switch box, and then it has a switch on it, and every time you hit the switch, it switches between your devices. So I have one right here underneath my desk, so it's really easy for me to just click it and then switch between my computers instead of having to unplug everything and plug it in to my different device when I want to use it. On the question of is having a multi-OS setup something you should do, I think for the most part this really depends on if it's something you can afford. There's really no benefit of having this type of setup that would outweigh going over your budget to acquire it, but assuming that it is something that you can afford, I would definitely recommend it. I think getting the opportunity to gain experience using as many different computer systems as possible is good for everybody. Even if you are really comfortable using one OS or even more than one OS, I think computer literacy in general is just something that's really important. We never know how technology is going to evolve over time. We know that it will, and we're probably all going to become the grandparent that can't get into their grandkids' VR birthday party or something like that. So having practice with new systems and learning new systems as we age, I think, is really important to mitigating that a little bit. Even in a more short-term perspective, I've just found that learning a new system, Linux in this case, and even Windows to a certain extent, has been a good exercise in problem solving, just in kind of a practical, fun way. If there's anything that you're curious about or you wanted to know about having multiple OSs in a setup or any aspect of that, definitely leave me a comment and I will answer you. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.